This next workshop is a fun workshop. I'm going to show you how to easily create a simple and easy lesson plan or plans. Sometimes you just don't want to use what comes with your curriculum, and sometimes you just can't really find a resource that you like, but you like a particular topic. So I'm going to show you how to easily create lesson plans for your children on a topic that you like. One thing that I want you to know is that lesson plans are just really a visual map of what you have in your mind or what you're thinking of. And here's one of my lesson plans that I started, and I used this bubble map, and I put the topic that interested my boys in the middle of it, which was the FBI. And then I put some thoughts or subjects that I wanted to cover, like the U.S. government. I knew this was like a middle and high school level plan. So I knew that was my focus, and then some of the other subtopics came from the interests that my kids had, like J. Edgar Hoover and spy gadgets and codes and things like that. But just remember, we're not public school teachers. We're not trying to lesson plan for 30 kids. We're just doing it for our kids. So you can be as detailed as you want to or not. And this is not the first step. But what I want to show you is where you can eventually go when it comes to lesson planning. That's why I'm showing this really is kind of the second step. What is the first step is using a book that is easier to map out your way, or to help you map out your way. So the first step is to choose a spine. And you'll hear that term a lot in the homeschool world. And what that means, a spine is a book or a resource, and all the other body of knowledge that you study about this topic is going to center or hang around this spine. This spine is what you build the other material on top of. It's your guide through the topic. So you choose your subject, you choose your resource, and here I chose this book because it's easy to be able to use. And on the front of it, it actually says it has 20 activities. It said it had some history in it. It has science. And so the first thing I did was I looked at the table of contents. There were 8 chapters. I realized 2 of them I wasn't interested in going over. So that left 6 chapters or 60 pages. So right away, I chose a resource. But then there's something else I want to show you about why I chose it. Inside the book, it had a place that was called Words to Know, right there with the definition. That could be for my younger kids, and then it had a glossary as well that was in the back of the book. So in addition to hands-on ideas, it had a little bit of the background or the history of the Amazon rainforest, a glossary, words to know. It was ideal for what I needed for what I was getting ready to do. So that's how I decided it, and I went ahead and whittled down to the 60 pages that I wanted to use. The second easy step is to determine your goal. And if you want to write something specific like objectives, and objectives are tiny measured steps, and sometimes if you live in a state that has stricter record keeping, you might need to write out objectives, but that doesn't have to be anything complicated. Now, I would write out objectives just because I wanted to measure at the end of the year to see how much progress my kids were making. And also objectives helps me to stay focused when I'm a week or 2 into the study, to be sure I'm covering some of the topics and points that I want to cover from the book. I don't mind rabbit trails, but in addition, I want to stay focused on what it is I'm trying to accomplish so we don't get too sidetracked. So you would think that a general amount of information would be good, but what I've learned is sometimes too much information, too broad, can choke. It can really choke. So I encourage you just to zoom in and focus on what exactly it is that you're trying to teach. What are your goals with this particular topic? And then the next point then, the next step is the length. The length. Okay, now here's where we hear the drum roll, please. And what I mean by that is this is different when we plan. If you have a background as a public school teacher or private teacher, this may be second nature to you. But if you're like me, I didn't have that background. I don't have that background. So I had to learn a few of these things, and I had to experience with it, or had to experiment with it until I got it right. So what I'm talking about is here, the standard is to determine your pace first, then determine the length. And that's kind of the opposite in public school. They'll say, okay, we have 3 weeks to study the subject, and then you try to cram it in that time. Well, at home, we don't have to do that. You determine what are the needs of your children, how much you want to study. First, do you want to study one subject, or do you want to study all of the subjects? And so I knew that I wanted to study all of the subjects. We were really going to dive into this. I knew the book had science, it had writing. I could choose writing prompts, essays, hands-on activities, history, and actually we ended up even doing art with this particular study. So the first thing I do is I compare the pace. You see here on the left side, we have 12 days, 5 pages each day to cover. And I thought, well, that's too fast. I don't want to go that fast. So then I work on another number. So then on the right side, I have 15 days with 4 pages. And also, you can see I also broke it down by week so I can keep up with how many weeks we're actually going to be studying it. So day 1, day 2, day 3, I just broke each one of them down for you by days and then to show you each page. Now also, you can change this around as you go along. Some days you may study more than 4 pages. I happened to choose the schedule that was on the right side, week 5, because I knew we were going to cover a lot. I didn't want to have to do so much work each day. So 3 days a week for us when we were doing a 4-day week was good enough for us. And also, you want to look at your resource or your book or your spine before you do this, because if the information is real meaty and real comprehensive, then you may need to cut back the number of days. So that is why I said, look at your resource first. I actually flipped through the book and I was able to see that a lot of the pages had a map or a graphic or an illustration on one side, which I really enjoyed. So I knew that 4 pages, which is actually 2 2-page spreads, wasn't a lot for us to have to cover for the day and plus do our projects. So then after that, it's just a matter of simple math. But that is the beauty of doing your own lesson planning. Determine first your pace, then look and compare the length. Public school teachers do it the other way around. They have 6 weeks to cover a topic, then they crammed in there. We don't have to do that. You can plan that way if you want to, but I encourage you to plan the other way with your kids' pace in mind. And then after that, it's just a matter of simple math. And then after you determine the length in step 3, next is your ideas. Your imagination is your limit, but your children's needs and passions or what they're interested in is your start point. I knew that we needed to cover the animal cells, plant cells. We need to cover a little more science. That's why I chose the Amazon rainforest topic. So things that came to my mind were to journal and label and grow and investigate and explore. And so I started making a list of ideas or things that we could do. I used my resource book, some I researched, and I began to pull my ideas together and make a list. And then from the ideas came the overflowing daily activities. So it's not really necessary. The point I'm making is to say day 1 we'll do this, day 2 we'll do this. You have a list, you let the book guide you. Now what I did do when I looked it over for the week is I would read each of the days ahead of time. I read actually for the whole week so I would know what we're studying for the week, and then I would have an idea of what we were doing. And some days we would do something hands-on. Right here I got my son to draw and label a cell. And some of the activities were easy, like the crossword puzzle we did, and then some of them were lengthy. And the crossword puzzle was something that didn't take any of my time to do. I wanted my children to be unplugged from their devices. I wanted them to spend time with each other. I wanted them to have quiet time to linger in the afternoon. So we did some puzzles. Then also we had a lengthy project through the whole course of the study of the Amazon rainforest. They each did a lap book that was very comprehensive. So you can choose easy ideas, you can choose complicated ideas, time consuming. The point is, from your list, you'll be able to choose these ideas that suit your family and your children's likes and what your goals are. be sure you cover what you know they need to know in this particular topic. Okay, then we move on to step 5, which is actually track and assess. Now you can determine what easy way you want to track. I've used many digital planners and trackers that come along. I've tried to use them, but for me, they just make me overplan. I like to type in all those little blank pages and oh, it feels so good having them all filled in, but it didn't really make me think about anything. So I realized I'm a pen and paper girl. It makes me slow down. I like to track the way I want to, and so I track just by weeks. And again, it doesn't have to all be filled out. You just have to have an idea of where you're going because each week is going to be different. That's the beauty of being able to plan like this so you can go at your own pace. And then, of course, it's full fun ahead. You're the teacher now. You can do what you want. So going back over the steps again, it's step 1. Choose a spine. It's a resource. It's a book. Look at the book. Be careful how you choose the book. When I mean be careful, look at it and decide, will this help me teach? Does this hold up the topic? Is there enough here that I can use it as a guide, a stepping stone? It doesn't mean you don't use other books to read. This is laying down the path. These are the stones that you will be stepping on as you go through the path of learning. So you will be assigning other projects to each kid depending on their age and different books you'll be assigning to them. And then the step 2 then is your goal. Do you want to study all of the subjects? Do you want to study one subject? And if you do, zoom in. What exactly do you want them to learn? There's other things obviously that they will learn, but don't miss the big things. What brought you to the study? Keep that in front of you when you get ready to plan. And then the next little inside secret is we don't have to plan like public school teachers. We don't have to say, oh, 4 weeks and then make everything fit in there. We can decide the pace first. How long do we want to study? What's the pace that's comfortable? And then we add the weeks to it. I happen to have chosen the one on the right side, which was the 4 pages, and it was a perfect pace for us. Actually, we went longer than 5 weeks. This was almost a 7-week study for us because my children really enjoyed this. We just stayed longer on some topics. And then from there, it's just a simple matter of math. Don't forget your ideas. Write down as many as you can, and you can keep adding to them. Sometimes I wouldn't find an idea until a week before we did it, and I thought, oh, this is a good idea. We can write about this, or do the history about this, or graph this, or this book goes along. So choose things, a combination of easy and less time consuming, and then lengthy projects. And then, of course, track it some way. Whether it's loosely writing it down, it can even just be a composition notebook. It could be some kind of digital tracker you prefer. Like I said, I'm a pen and paper girl. I prefer the lesson plans that I make, or the lesson templates that I make, and I write them on there. And then, of course, like I said, it's full fun ahead. So I hope you took away some of the 5 easy tips from this workshop on how to create a simple and easy lesson plan. Again, in another workshop, I will show you how to organize lesson plans.